Okay, now we should probably clarify a little bit about, you mentioned Skull and Bones, and many of the people wouldn't be familiar with that, and the cap and gown. So what are these clubs that these young inductees are pulled into, secret societies?
Secret societies. And
again, is this to make them feel super special?
Yes.
And also put a control on them
Yes.
so that you never tell these secrets?
Yes. That's it. You have got it.
You know, I've heard a lot of child molesters. I mean, people who are not connected with the military, just plain old child molesters, will molest a child and then tell them, now if you ever tell, you know, they'll take a cat and strangle it and kill it or something. This is what I'm going to do to your mother. This is what I'll do to you.
Yes.
Bad things will happen if you ever tell.
That's right.
And children grow up believing that I must never ever tell. And they don't, generally.
That's right.
Unless someone comes along to help them see the light and come out of it.
Yes. And you see, my husband is frightened to death. I believe that his brother was murdered to keep him in, because he had gone through 4 years of this mind control. And the man who did it, you can see this on the video, his name was Charles Caddock, and another man named Alexander Robinson.
Okay, Charles Caddock.
Caddock.
And the other one?
Alexander Robinson. Alexander Robinson was a Marine, very well-connected Presbyterian family, whose family member was the influential one who brought over the Saudis. The original Saudi head of Saudi Arabia was George told me all this about Mohammed Faisal, Khalid Faisal, and Saud Faisal, and there were something like 32 brothers of the then in the mid-50s, the ordained, you know, whoever was head of Saudi Arabia. It was actually the United States who chose that person, because the United States, through Charles Caddock and that group, murdered the good one, the one whom everybody liked, who was well educated, and who was normal. In, I believe it was 1952, 1953, 1954, in Paris, the universal Saudi, the well-educated Saudi, was poisoned.
And what would his name
Charles
be?
Caddock.
I don't suppose it's all that important, but anyway.
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Fahim, or he died in Paris. And so his brother, his half-brother or whatever, was the father of all these 32 boys, and the 3 oldest now were snuck into the United States. I have a degree in history, Virginia history, undergraduate degree, and master's in Scottish history. And being a Southerner, we always look at, you know, past is prologue. And I jumped into the Saudi Arabian books to try and find out something about the Hun School, which is in Princeton, started by a physicist connected with Einstein in that group. So I was looking for the Hun School because I knew they went there. And they're in all the brochures. They're very proud to say, you know, we have the Saudi royals went here. President Cheeseborough brags about going over there and being wined and dined, and you know. So I only found one reference, but it was a reference that said something like they went to a prep school in the United States. That's all they said. Well, it was the Hun School, and my husband was one of the playmates. Charles Caddock was the bodyguard, quote-unquote teacher for these guys. So they would go out and play in the woods, and they were doing homosexual things with them. You know, I mean, there was a lot of money. They bought a big house.
Yeah.
And so.
Okay, now, I was momentarily distracted.
Okay.
explain to me a little bit about this, the homosexual event here.
Well, George, for the first 3 years of our marriage, was drinking entirely too much, and he was trying to let me know about his world, and I'm not judging him. He's a bisexual.
Okay, and he
believe.
needed help.
He needed help. He needed
Still
love.
does.
He needed cry. He
Yeah.
still does.
Mm-hmm.
He really needs help, and the handlers knew that I was changing him. I was taking him away from this crazy cult
Right.
that he'd been in all these years. And I mean, we were going to church. He even walked down the aisle one time when Tony Evans preached at Scope. I mean, he was overwhelmed. And
At Scope. No,
at Scope in Norfolk, it's a big auditorium.
Oh, okay.
And so, but he was a little boy when he was, it's mind control. MK Ultra, somebody said. They had a group of men, psychiatrists in New Jersey. I don't know where this place was, but they would go, and even his roommates in Princeton told me about it. George never, intentionally, he never introduced me to any of his friends. So I had to cold call all these people. I got their names and addresses, telephone numbers. I called all these roommates at the Hun School and at Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
They told me things about George and, holding hands with, with Caddick and other people, about being a cheerleader and going off and so forth.
Now, a cheerleader, this is a kind of a trade name, right?
No, he was a cheerleader for the
At Princeton.
At Princeton.
Oh,
And he
okay.
traveled with the football team.
Okay.
And here is a guy like that. They put him in the Marine Corps. I don't think that was very nice. Do you know what I'm saying? It was hard for him. But
it was part of the
the
long-term vision.
Absolutely. They wanted him long-term. And it's because of the Saudis. This is what I believe and what his roommate believes. He had a roommate at Princeton who was also at the Hun, who's a dear, dear, wonderful. His mother is an Anglican. His father was a Jewish doctor from Brooklyn, and Jack is a dear, and we talk to each other a lot on the phone. George sort of, dismissed him because George was getting in with another crowd. George got into Cap and Gown, which is the same kind of fraternity. I mean, it's an eating club at Princeton for intelligence officers.
It's Cap and Gown. Would they have anybody involved that wasn't intelligence-oriented?
Football players and so forth. But I have a feeling that Cap and Gown has a lot of intelligence officers and boys who may have been raped. Of course, they'd never talk about it.
Right.
But I know that the initiation is, they get very drunk, and even in the Marine Corps they do that. It's called dining in. They have the shellback ceremony. They do a lot of homosexual enticement. The boys are, when they come in, when they're new recruits, they strip them nude, they violate their personal parts. There's a lot of that is going on.
What about
even now?
Tailhook?
Yeah.
Is there a connection?
Yeah, sure, because the cream of the crop is doing this. They're having group sex parties.
And that was a Navy operation too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Of course, maybe we ought to for those
That's another.
that tailhook, they don't know anything about. Tailhook was refresh our memories.
Well, tailhook. In fact, I when I was single in Norfolk, I know one of the people who was deeply involved with tailhook, who is was the captain of the Saratoga, was very much involved with this kind of behavior. I know a lot about the, see, I never thought about group sex. This is so awful for me to contemplate that these orgies are going on all over the Mediterranean, that the captains, lieutenants, the men who rise to the top are the ones who are picked to play the games, the pool parties, the nude pool parties. And they have secretaries who come in. I've talked to 3 guys, and of course my husband, who went to these parties. But what they do is, and this is General Al Gray, who was the main prime mover, they would go to a place like Aix-les-Rosés, where Charles Caddock, this teacher who inducted, got my husband into it, he retired in one of these all-male party houses on the Mediterranean. I mean, that's where and my husband kept up with him all through the years.
But these sex parties and orgies, they're all homosexual in nature, or
well,
is there some heterosexual?
They start off with the wild secretaries. It's kind of, you know, my husband did those in Indonesia. He did them at a place in Northern Virginia with his first wife. I did not know any of this. I knew absolutely none of this when I married him. He told me he was loyal to his wife. He wanted me to think he was just apple pie, because I'm just a one-man woman.
Right.
When I took that oath to marry him, love, honor, and obey, that's me. But he, when he was married to his first wife, was just an addict. He was a sexual addict, an alcoholic addict. He loves, you know, terror, and his whole little soul was just being sucked away from him desperately. And he needs Christ. He needed me day in and day out. He did not need to be, what he's doing now is running more of these operations.
You know, as you describe this, I can't help but think of Bill Clinton.
Well, of course he was. He was one of those profile boys. But the difference between Bill Clinton, and I'm not saying Bill Clinton's better, but Bill Clinton did not he didn't know anything about the assassinations. Bill Clinton, when I was living with Sarah McClendon, the senior White House correspondent who saved my life, because she said, Mrs. Griggs, you get up here to Washington right now or you're dead. You're going to be dead. And I still feel as though I probably will be. I'll certainly be financially ruined. They are still doing psychological operations in my home, sabotaging my car, messing with my telephone, my radio. You cannot believe what I've been through in the last 2 years. It is horrible. And it's being done to other women and other wives and other men who don't go along with the program. They are murdering Marines, they're murdering sailors,